Time is the only thing we all feel running out of, yet almost nobody truly understands it. We measure it, we schedule it, we complain about not having enough of it. But what if the way time feels has less to do with clocks and more to do with how we live, how we change, and how we perceive beauty? Today's guest is Adrian Bejan, J.A. Jones Distinguished Professor at Duke University, MIT-trained scientist, author of 30 books and hundreds of scientific papers, and recipient of the Benjamin Franklin Medal for a theory that explains how design, flow, and evolution happen everywhere, in nature, technology, society, and in us. In his book, Time and Beauty, which we will reference in this podcast, Professor Adrian Bejan challenges something deeply personal. Why time seems to fly, why beauty stays, and why change, not speed, may be the secret to a longer, richer life. This is not a conversation about managing time. It's a conversation about living it. So let's begin. Mr. Adrian Bejan, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to the Life and Business Champion podcast. And thank you for stepping in virtually in our studio in Romania, iTalks.
I'm flattered to be invited. I'm sorry I'm not with you one-on-one in Bucharest, but this is the next best possibility, and let's make the most of it.
Okay, thank you again. I would love to open up with a question. I read your book, Time and Beauty. It's available. It's a very interesting and timely book, especially in my life. I have 45 years. I have 2 kids. And recently I was contemplating about why I do feel time flies, why in some moments I feel the day has not anymore 24 hours, but less. And then I had a very interesting discussion with my friends and even my grandmother, who said that at her age, time also feels that has shrinked. So coming back to that, I read your book and I recommend everyone to find Time and Beauty in English and of course in Romanian, also published. If I would apply everything what you discovered and wrote down about time and beauty, what would be the biggest change in my life?
Well, the punchline, if you ask us, this topic of time is about perception, and the perceiving time is just one of the so-called intangibles. So yes, the lesson to Adrian is that I have to be more and more curious, but also serious about how I perceive my immediate environment. You mentioned beauty, that's one. There are some other things, danger. Keyword is attractiveness as opposed to repulsiveness. Good versus evil. All these things are very old notions, and perhaps the oldest is the perception that today is different than yesterday. This is the perception of change, and change is happening after change. In other words, the change is never ending, and from I don't know when, from the emergence of language, change was recorded in words such as new, old, today, yesterday, and okay, past and future. And the one word for that package of notions is time, or chronos in Greek. And then, of course, with science, not to mention other artifacts that we embraced, literature, music, and obviously religion ahead of everything. Time became a notion of its own. And then it became abstract in physics, and that is why today the world is at once educated and confused, or educated and unaware of the importance of paying attention to perceptions, which in science are called intangible or impossible to grasp.
You mentioned in several times in or at least at the beginning, definitely of your book, and you talk about the difference between clock time and mind time. And
yeah,
could you just unpack this? What's the difference between the clock time and, of course, the mind time, and why we tend to perceive the time passing by differently based on our age, based on our experience, based on what's happening around us?
Okay, I will answer in the order that you spoke. First, time, which you called, and I call mind time, is this a label we put on the perception of change after change after change. That is what we perceive. There are, of course, huge numbers of people like Adrian, every single one with his own mind time, and then, of course, over the course of civilization and movement on the planet, sailing ships and today aviation, it made sense to to establish a convention, an agreement on when is sunrise on Earth and when is happening sundown on Earth, and that consensus or that convention is the claim. It is the clock time. So the clock time that appears now on my iPhone is the conventional time with which everybody is urged to agree or urged to behave in order not to be late or too early at the appointment. So those two are very different things. But I'll make a joke about it. Even the clock time, if you ask yourself, you the individual, what do you mean by that? Well, by that you mean your perception of the change in the direction of the hands on the dial, or the change of the digits if it's a digital clock. So even the machine time is up to you to perceive it. That is, if you're honest with the animal that you represent. So it all boils down to you, the individual, and what you mean by time, which again is change after change, synonymous with the expression that you use, that time is passing or time is flying. All that is of course makes sense if you question your perceptions. And yes, there's a speed to these changes, and that is the speed that alerted your mother, alerted everybody I know. In fact, when I published this paper in 2019, I published a journal paper, peer-reviewed in 2019. I wrote in the book that was the most read article in the month of March 2019, and I'm not even a medical doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist. You see, and this comes from the story that I was recounting during my sleep last night.
Can you unpack and made us very simple to understand, everyone, the YouTube viewers, and also all those who may be only just listening to us? How do we perceive time, and why at certain moments on our lives, whether it's due to age, it's due to circumstances, or why do we feel that time just it stops and sometimes just disappears? So first of all, how do we perceive the time passing, and why sometimes time stops or time just shrinks in our life?
Okay, well, I'll get to the physics of it. How do we perceive? Well, it takes a particular individual to pay attention of what's going on. I tell my students not to graduate from Duke like a sheep. You should graduate as an individual with not only a mind but the ability to to question what is happening around, and yes, this perception that time is accelerating, I had it very early in my life. In fact, I remember vividly the first time it was in the 5th grade when was the beginning of my activity in the mathematics Olympiad. And it is there that I discovered that the 1 hour in the exam was a lot shorter than the 1 hour in elementary school. And that was a wake-up call, which of course intensified from one year to the next. And at the same time, I was a very serious, let's call it aspiring basketball player. I noticed that the game was also becoming shorter. There was it was over before it began, as I became an adult. And in other words, this perception turned out to be very useful, because in mathematics I had um, to be very careful, not to make mistakes, because there was no time to go back and redo everything. The same thing in basketball. Mistakes on the court are punished with time have to be spent on the bench. And so, yes, to the viewer, pay attention to what you perceive. It may be troublesome, but it will be very useful that you are constantly in touch with your surroundings, human or not human. And certainly along the way, now all the way to the present, this impression became kind of no news, because time kept accelerating, and from this, the order that I was giving to other people, I was giving myself. Adrian, be very careful. Work on what is important. Do not work on everything. The expression "don't spread yourself too thin" comes from this, that time is valuable, and in fact increasingly more valuable as you become older. And that's the story, for me, an old one. The thing that fascinated me the first 2 chapters was the question of how in the heaven I decided to work on this. And I decided to write it down, because the challenge was ever present. It has to do with it has to do with the advantage that only the amateur possesses. The amateur. I'm an amateur in French. I'm not in the field. My training is in thermodynamics, which is the science of power. Power from all sorts of sources, traditionally from fossils. But anyway, power, watts out of the electric outlet. And power drives everything. And everything, meaning movement, is life. So if you're honest about the profession of power engineering, you have to accept that under your tent reside all the animals and all life, and all movement. And that's how I began. I became curious and creative about predicting the movement of things on the globe, which means on a surface. I predicted in retrospect how the design of an airport should be, and it is the way it is, a combination of long and fast movement, hand in glove with short and slow pedestrian movement. And that led to a configuration, which is everywhere now on the globe, or a configuration that, as a metaphor, could be described as people scanning with their feet the area. And yes, the key word is scanning. And I gave a speech on this discovery at a conference of civil engineers about 15 years ago, and there was a an old professor from the audience who said, well, if you're talking about scanning an area, how about scanning the field of vision? This person. I should have had the zip to ask him to identify himself, because in my head on stage, I saw immediately that the connection that this questioner made was between the physical thing about stepping on the dirt, which is to move on land, and what the eyes are doing when they're perceiving an image. And this led to this physics aspect of what we mean by beauty, why the shape of this computer screen is this way, like a business card, and not like some other things, and not like the flag of Nepal or Bahrain. Yes, it is this way because this is the shape that scanned the fastest.
And it also has to do with the golden ratio, of course.
Yes, and this shape, that's right. This is another beautiful connection with the past, which is that once you predict the business card shape, you have a physics reason to anticipate this preference, human preference, but of course our predecessors during the Renaissance were very, very smart and creative. They observed the human preference for this kind of design, and for lack of a scientific way to anticipate it, they attributed this form to God, to the divine. So the golden ratio is known as the divine proportion. I would say quite rightly, and so that prevailed. In fact, it is part of the terminology today. However, I arrived at it because I paid attention to a question from the audience. You see, I could have just waved it off and rushed rushed off stage. But the click with which I already began is the importance of not dismissing your perceptions, which scientists all over call intangibles or opinions, not to be put in bed with the hard facts or holy scriptures of science, you see. And I walk the other way, and that is the introduction to this particular topic of the acceleration of time. Yes, what is the perception of the speeding time? Well, it has to do with scanning. It has to do with the physics of perception and then recording what was perceived. In
change
the
over
simplest
time?
way.
Does it change?
Yes.
Does it our ability to perceive change? To perceive the time. Does it change over time when we have a different way and different speed of perceiving what's happening around us when we are young versus when we are older, or when we are even in our?
Yes. I'm getting to that. Because of the conventional time, the clock time, the prevailing thought about time is that there's a continuous tape that's running. You can be in it or you can not be in it, and that is actually not the case. The perception of time is in snapshots. Called saccade. I'm talking about visual perception here. The eye records images, about 3 or 5 of them per second, called saccade, from which there's a word in Romanian like that. And these images are transmitted from the retina to the brain. The transmission, like everything that travels, say the train on its rail, covers a length and at a particular speed. And the time of transmission, of course, is the is the ratio of the length divided by the speed. And so that's all the mathematics that underpins what I'm going to say next. And this means that the brain during while the person is awake with the eyes open, the brain receives a finite number of inputs or images or impressions. Every single one is different than the preceding one, and that difference is the change. You see, because images are different. And now the brain itself was formed in infancy. The infant is born with an unusually, in terms of proportion, unusually large head, which means brain. And in the beginning of growth, a huge portion of the metabolic input is for the purpose of developing the brain. So every single one of us has the brain from infancy. And in infancy, that time of transmission from, meaning the time interval from between these images that are landing on the brain is short. Why? Because the distance between retina and cortex is short, and because in infancy, unlike in old age, the channels are not falling apart. They are not eroding.
Let me understand this. First of all, because the infant's brain is not that complicated and the neuronal paths are not that complex as we have now, the information travels faster, so therefore reaches the cortex more inputs and more impressions, therefore we perceive change more. And later on, our pathways are getting slower and our mind getting more complex. So these two together makes that fewer impressions reach the cortex. So therefore, we perceive less change in the same time frame of 24 hours.
Yeah, that's right. During daylight. Yeah, that's right. That's what. Anyway, the point is the following. It's about perception. The brain, which was formed in infancy, is used to perceiving a large number of snapshots. And then, of course, as you develop, you become bigger. First is the size that grows. It's not just the complex, I agree with that, but it's the fact that the distances, the lengths of these channels are increasing. The distance traveled by these inputs increases. And as I said, the number of inputs decreases during light hours. So at the end of the day, the brain has the feeling, meaning it alerts you to the fact that nighttime arrived too soon, according to its taste, according to its design. You see, and this happens permanently, because from one decade to the next, even if the brain gets used to that kind of fast time, during the next decade, the time is feels as if it's passing faster because of the decreasing number of impressions that the brain receives.
But we are living, and you are living also, regardless of the country or continent we are talking about, in a very accelerated time. We have digital devices around us, we have alerts, we have notifications, we have multiple people, like we are talking over the ocean, and we can discuss. So there are a huge number of triggers around us, and they are getting more and more and more every day. And even so, so that's basically could mean that a lot of change happens around us. Is it because we get numb to these changes and we just ignore them? Therefore, we still, at one point, we can perceive our day very short and meaningless? Or what's the mechanism why in this very busy world we still feel that time flies?
Yeah, the world is busy as you describe it. The viewer, however, is the busier the world gets, the less interested the viewer. There's a lot of overlooking that goes on. I'll give you examples from my profession here in publishing. Scientific publishing now is a cacophony. Everybody publishes because writing is machine writing, not by hand. Publishing is machine publishing. It's not done by individuals such as yourself at a table with a pen in his hand. The editors have disappeared. Now it's machines all over, to the point that most publishers are unknown. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows from what country they're arriving in order to solicit manuscripts from you. And as a result, I would say close to 100% of what is being published is not read. Even less used, even less cited. And you see, so yes, things are accelerating. There's volume of old stuff because writing and publishing is an old technology now with the newer tools, but the artifact is from antiquity, and I have a line about it, about anything that benefits so fantastically from new technology. The dictum is the following: once dear, now derisory. You see, think about it. Take any example you want. Raising your own pig for Christmas to now, of course, that's yes, there is meat in the stores. You have no idea how it got there, and it's the same with all these novelties that they keep invading and actually empowering us. But we have to be very, very clear about the origin of all this goodness. The origin is the individual, one with an idea, who is kept awake at night by the idea. That is the origin of every single, let's call it, new light bulb that comes. And that is worth keeping in mind. And by the way, and I arrive again at the sakad that are important, the ones that leave an impression, meaning the changes, and there are very few in a man's day, very few changes that are worth remembering, because the day itself is a routine. We can get to the technique of slowing down the time, and again, it's about paying attention to changes, paying attention to the changes, to choices you make in life, which means choices you make every moment of the day. For example, my choice of answering your approach, that was a choice, but I had to think about it. And every single thing like that is important if you're interested in in a happy and useful life that leads to making a contribution.
We went through a great global experience, which happened, fortunately, doesn't happen very often, and I hope it will not happen in the near century neither. Because I'm talking about the pandemic. The pandemic made a big impact back then, and still they have some reverberation in our lives. And I remember that when everything started and we stopped going to the work and we were at office, at home office, at the beginning I had the impression that time just slowed down because it was new, and then it picked up very fast because it was routine, I guess. Now, some might, and you are also mentioning this in your book about what happened in pandemic and how you cope with it, and what was your impression and perception of it. Is that a challenging moment in a human history which we can learn from it, and if so, what?
Well, I would say
all the time?
every cataclysm um, uh, has a useful message that rides on it. You see, you look at anything like that in the history of say Europe. People, yes, people obviously suffered. Many perished. They lost relatives, many of them in the U.S. And so people became more careful with the medical aspect of life.
Yeah.
First of all, people get vaccinated for all sorts of things now. But uh, but yes, there's a connection with meaning the message of how important it is to pay attention to your daily choices. The pandemic arrived when my book was already sent to production. It was these things that you bring up were add-ons that recommended themselves. The editor embraced them because they were very good for drawing attention to the book, meaning the book was older than the pandemic. And what you described about your own life during the pandemic is identical to mine. In the beginning, things were appeared to be at a standstill. That was not new to Adrian. I was when people stopped going to the office, meaning automobile traffic almost disappeared. There was silence in my city. My city is not small. It's probably the size of the Galatz of my time, and all of a sudden there was silence, and neighbors were inviting each other across the fence for the first time ever, and I grew up without automobiles on the street. You know, there were you know, charrette, these horse-driven vehicles from the old movies moving around, and that lasted about 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden, these people who are still on foot, you know, all over, they were milling around on the streets, or looking at their iPhones, not at their neighbors. So the office had moved home. It was in everybody's hand, and yes, life accelerated again. I made. I don't know whether I wrote in the book. I revolted against this. The decision to. It was called a lockdown, meaning they locked the university so that you could not, meaning students and professors could not access. And I was teaching at the time, so I was supposed to teach on Zoom with a document reading, whatever you call this thing, from above. And I said, well, the hell with that. So I discovered, with the help of a machinist here at Duke, a way to enter the building, and I had a visitor, a professor from Turkey, who thought of himself as a movie maker, and he filmed me at the blackboard with chalk, teaching the lecture to an empty room, and then I projected this recording to the students, who would then watch it online. In order to provide continuity for the teaching method, because what happened during the pandemic was a crime against education. Students were herded like you know, animals into a movie theater to watch movies, as opposed to participating and taking notes and asking questions.
Okay, and you embraced the old habit, but put it on the digital platform, while of course filming you, and that was the different experience. You also mentioned something what caught my attention in my quest to figure out how can I and my friends around me can learn from you how we can slow down time. And you mentioned the fact that at one point in the pandemic, at the beginning, when many new things were in our lives, we perceived, of course, time differently because we had different new things, changing things in our life. So I reckon that embracing change, it's a option to slow down time. Are there any other options and things we can do to slow down time and to live the time what we have on Earth?
Well, embracing change it covers everything. It's not just for example, in teaching is about every year. Okay, I teach the same course or the same 3 courses. Every lecture of mine is new. I am not going to teach to use old notes. I write about 6 pages of notes the night before I speak, and those are new. They are new, and yes, they are the meat and bones of a new publication later on. Um, I'm not. By the way, if you talk to theater actors, they'll tell you that their performance this evening was different than the night before. Mm-hmm. That is, if they are really good actors, okay. And they will tell you. They'll tell you that there are this difference, the newness in the performance of the moment is what makes them happy about their performance. Repeating does not make them happy. They okay. So change, the goodness of change is the the bread and butter of happiness. The alternative is everything, also called boredom and putrefaction, the standstill, the stagnation, which is of course the precursor to death. That is the difference. Mm-hmm. And once again, pay attention to what makes you happy, okay? And then if you are really, really curious, you arrive at this conclusion that you spelled out, that change is the answer. And in most cases, it doesn't cost anything. It just requires a decision to get off the couch and to turn off the television and to take a walk, to look at the birds, and then look in a dictionary of birds to learn something new about the type of the bird, where it came, who brought it. In this case, in North America, many of these things were brought by Europeans. And all of that is interesting material for a curious mind. We're talking about languages in our earlier discussion. Yes, get curious about why you pronounce one word. Where did it come from? And what did that word mean at origin? Because along the way, words change meaning, they change pronunciation, they change spelling. And the history itself is all about change. If it was not change, it would not be on the page.
Exactly.
Even better. The personalities that are mentioned in history are prime movers of change. Prime movers. There are many so-called leaders, kings, counts, all these people, all the way to the Bolsheviks, and but the ones who are remembered for better or for worse are the ones who
they did something different or change.
They did something different, and they did it. They did it in a significant way. And anyway, so the advice is to be curious and to question yourself as you go. And sometimes, if you have the means to make decisions that put you suddenly in a different environment. I have an interest, again, goes back to my origins. I grew up around my father was a highly gifted veterinarian to whom everybody was a dog, meaning there was this oneness that he talked about, and so even though I did not become a biologist, I have a feel for these things, and the fact that the animal senses the immediate environment just as full of curiosity as the human being. You look in the eyes of the cat. The cat is scanning everything about you, everything, up and down and left and right. And because of this upbringing of mine, my wife and I make the effort every year to go spend a week or two in the wild in Africa, okay, which is loaded with images and impressions and lessons, and very few people, except the natives who know what is going on, and language galore, meaning very different. These are natives, and of course that's a slowdown time because it's very, very different. It is every single year it's memorable because of that. Why, but even better, we look forward to this escape, and this is how the ship keeps on sailing, as opposed to being stuck in a routine.
I'm glad that you ended up with this word routine, because again, with discussions with people around me, I was talking about the fact that I will record this podcast with you, and we're going to talk about time, and hinted about one of the recipes to slow down time and to make it more memorable is change. And then they said, well, yes, Csaba, that's very interesting. However, in our lives, we sometimes build in routines, in sometimes dressed up as discipline. And what is the fine line between a routine-less life or a disciplined life when you do certain things at certain moments of your day?
I will. Those are two different concepts. The routine is up to you. Discipline is something else. The routine is very, very useful and very important for the purpose that I was describing earlier, which is to give you the time to make choices. There are things every day that have to be done. For example, I spend a lot of time. I do every day. I spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I cook, I clean, I put the dishes away. All these things. These are movements that require obviously time. But if you pay attention to what you do, you develop a sequence in which to make these moves, so that, among other things, your travel through the kitchen is minimized during the execution of that particular task. And so, if you have the routine is in fact subliminally the result of you're constantly trying to do it better, which means faster and without breaking dishes. And so the routine liberates you for creative time next, meaning when you're out of the kitchen. You see that? So routine is very good. For example, Arnold Schwarzenegger last week gave somewhere a speech in which he credited credited his career in bodybuilding to routine. Of course, he had to be not only disciplined, but very good at gaining muscle per unit time, and that required a regime of training that was useful for him, but not wasting his time. Now, discipline is yes, kind of a big tent, like the circus, over all these acts of routine development, a big tent that defines you as a disciplined home builder, meaning family builder, provider, parent, and of course, professor. I'm actually a parent to a lot of the students here. Yes, and all these things. So requires discipline, also known as the talent of not screwing up. Okay, yes, or yes, or of not falling off the bridge. There is or not driving in the wrong lane. Discipline is good. There are people who think that discipline is a construct against freedom. That's nonsense. Then is liberating. Look at the winning team.
Why do you say that?
Yeah, well, look at one of a football team. A football team is successful, and success begins with discipline, with not breaking the laws. Okay, that is the rules of the game, and the game is with laws, because the game is supposed to be safe, not murderous. Yes, that is it is supposed to be the bastion of merit, not of atrocities, and on and on. So discipline is good, yes. The rules of the road are in place because they are good. The even better rules are the ones that are asking to be reevaluated and updated and changed. In other words, rigidity in rule making is not a good idea. But discipline is part of civilized man that is not to be dismissed. But inside of this, structure with the pillars that support the tent, there's plenty of freedom in which the individual, once again, begins with himself and should recognize that there is space to make choices. In this case, choices having to do with routine, which can be useful. Discipline, which is definitely to the benefit of the individual, and then on the sides of that, there's freedom galore to be creative and enterprising.
You also touched on multiple cases about athletes. And athletes.
About what?
Athletes, sports people.
Yeah, right, yes.
Yeah, okay. The fact that they focus on using time wisely, on, of course, being present in their training, and definitely in their competitions. What can we learn from athletes regarding wise use of time and making the most out of it?
Well, I know this answer obviously from growing up as an athlete. The coach was constantly preaching and acting on this theme. Smoking was forbidden. Drinking was definitely not encouraged. It was discouraged. Spending nights with women was very bad for the game. All of these things were discussed, and they had a very, very useful effect on the individuals who played the game. And I know for a fact that that sort of training is emphasized a lot more loudly today, a lot more loudly. Our family were fans of Arsenal Football Club, and when we got a chance, we go to a game. And about 2 years ago, in the hotel that's closest to the Arsenal Stadium, we discovered that the whole team, in the morning, when we're getting ready to go to the stadium, in the same hotel had stayed the entire team, even though they live in town, you see. So no wives, no women, no children, all of that was off limits, just like when I was a basketball player. I was astonished, and never mind the fact that that game, Arsenal lost that game. So the discipline did not help in this case, or maybe it did. The point is that athletics is a university of its own, meaning a school. I recommend it very, very strongly to young people to do sports.
We are closing to the end of our podcast, and until now I wrote down definitely that I will focus on change, curiosity, make sure that I have healthy routines and discipline, focusing on certain aspects of my life in order to make the most out of it, and to free my mind for the creative part. Because if I remember correctly, you also said that monotony, can stimulate the creative mind. Now, being at the end of, or close to the end of this podcast, this episode at least, we can of course have other ones in the future. Is there any subject regarding time and beauty what you would love to discuss and we haven't touched on them yet?
Well, I would like to discuss my newest ideas. That's why I was suggesting it I would be happy to be invited back. I'm now I'm in this gold mine of perceptions that have not, meaning intangibles. People that words that are being spoken, but people hesitate to touch. The word freedom is one. I wrote a book about this a few years ago. I joke, freedom is, in fact, without freedom, there is no change. So I'm questioning the honesty of those who talk about change. You know, how can it, in engineering, for example, you cannot have something new, a new design, unless you benefit from the freedom to make a change. Mm-hmm. And freedom in engineering, for those who know a few things, is called degree of freedom. These are very, very few ways in which you could make a change by hand or by imagination. Animal design is God's work. It's just the result of an infinite number of unknown, innumerable degrees of freedom. I find this fascinating. And then most recently, especially because of some of the political correctness all around, diversity. Why are everything is different than its neighbor. Everything, even though the neighbor is also a specimen of the Homo sapiens, meaning where all the cats are cats, but every single one is different. So diversity, a common descriptor that is waiting for a solid handle with which to be grabbed, you see. So I'm the one who is doing the grabbing by taking chances.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that. I'm interested in reading your new book about freedom, and would recommend for all of you who are listening or looking at this podcast to take a look at the book which started this conversation, is Time and Beauty. It will help you to understand, for my case, it helped me to understand what to do in order to slow down time, what to do to make my time, my daylight time, definitely more richer by taking the time to pay attention to small changes in my life. And definitely I wrote down some elements. Now, for those who are listening and looking at us at the moment, if you would recommend for tomorrow to make a small change in their life, to make their life more richer, what would that be?
Well, to look in the mirror, and say, "Hey, Johnny, do you like yourself? You know, what makes you happy? You know, talk to yourself. It's okay to talk to yourself and question yourself. And the question is, what would make me happy today? And you'll discover answers that are modest. You know, taking a walk or calling an old friend, taking your wife somewhere that the two of you have not seen ever before, and talking to the elders. If you're young, definitely call your parents, your grandparents. They will not be with you forever.
Call your
do
kids
something
if you're in the other part.
In the other direction, of course, yes. I call my teammates from many decades ago. Yes, but question yourself. But the question for you every morning you wake up, as you look at yourself, what would make me happy, and stay close to that rail of the train. You know.
Mm-hmm. Question ourselves. That's an interesting thing. I will add that to my list. Talking about questions, we have a closing tradition in our podcast. Every guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who he or she will be. And the last guest was here in the studio, left you a question. And the question is the following. It's a simple and short one. What brings peace in your life?
What? Would you speak slow?
What brings peace in your life?
Peace?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the package that I unpacked in my last statement about questioning myself and reminding myself that I have the power to live a better day. That day when I wake up, I have the power to make choices. I have the power to say no. I have the power to work on a better idea, for example, as opposed to something that's boring or something that somebody else is oppressing me with. You see, so that is the source of peace. Because if you don't do, meaning if I don't do what I just spelled out, I discover how the how the slave feels. You know, the ones who work for somebody else, and I that makes me very unhappy. I've been in situations of unhappiness in my life, meaning when it comes to work, and I know what to avoid. That's another way, by the way, to restate what I said. You know the feeling of the opposite of peace. You see, so do your best to stay away from that feeling.
Thank you very much for your thoughts on that question, and you will leave your secret question for our next guest. Mr. Adrian Bejan, thank you very much for joining us on this podcast. And you're, of course, every time welcome back with the new ideas. And if we want to talk about your books, iTalk Studios doors are always open for you. Thank you very much. And I note down the curiosity, change, discipline, routine, and the curiosity and stamina to look at the mirror every morning and ask, what do I really like on myself and what to do? Thank you for these advices. And for all those who looked at this podcast, one idea kept returning, that time is not something we manage, but something we design through the changes we choose to make. In the final pages of Time and Beauty, Adrian Bejan writes, your life, every hour and every day, is a sequence of changes that you make. Right versus wrong, up versus down. You make decisions every moment you perceive a click. That's your freedom. Your life is the design, and you are the designer. I would like to challenge you with 3 tasks for today. Decide, 1, not to notice one moment today instead of rushing past it. 2nd, question one routine you've been repeating without thinking. Routines are good, but you have to leave them also. And 3, choose one small change, not to optimize your time, but to live it. Because, as Adrian Bejan says, every moment you perceive a click is already a decision. Thank you for listening to this and watching us at Life and Business Champion. I'm Csaba Demeter, and until next time, stay curious and stay in living your life with changes.